electronically or what have you. Where do awards go on your resume? On the bottom, typically. That's where you would do awards and recognition. Should graduate and undergraduate experience be separated in terms of, I'm trying to remember this one. And this is kind of the question that was just asked. If you want to separate it under experience, in terms of, you could do it that way, you know, current or past, or if you wanted to do experience and then related, you could separate it out. How do you show undergraduate experience and when should you take it off your resume? I think we got to that one already. So see? More participant questions. What is the ideal resume format? I think chronological. What order should information be listed in? It's most current going backwards. Is there a certain length? I would say the general format for all of you is going to be a 2-page document. You could go to 3 if you're doing something like a scholarship, but I think for employers, they're going to expect that unless you have more experience. What category is the most desirable to begin a resume with? I think I answered this one. Education for recently minted graduates. And once you're out for a couple of years, bring it back down to the bottom. Work experience is the most important part, I believe, of a resume. What makes a resume stand out amongst competition? You know, it's going to vary in terms of what the employers are looking for. But for me, it's usually something that's in a format that they can understand, and that's succinct. You know, that really communicates clearly who you are. The ones that have the problems are the ones that are all over the place. And it's funny, something as simple as like, can I use this for example? As the dates lining up. You know, everybody becomes an award-winning detailist when they're looking at resumes. And I would just say that if you haven't looked at things like spelling and formatting and all that stuff, because you've been so diligent about putting your resume together, do it and come at it with fresh eyes. And one that, by the way, I guess this is the most important, the one that responds to the position is probably the one that's going to stand out the most. I've seen some of the cover letters that come in for jobs that we have on in our Career Center, and they're addressing them to UCSD, the Career Center director there, Andy Sepperly, who I know really well. What is the biggest mistake an applicant can make when creating a resume? Not considering her audience. I put the answer in there. That's an easy one. Cover letter basics. So, are they necessary? Like I said before, yes, when they're required. For me, a cover letter is going to be no more than 3 paragraphs, really, an ideal cover letter. And you can go a little bit more in depth if you're applying for like a faculty position or something in a higher level administration. And when they demonstrate competence with written communication, it's got to be really intentional. I was just asked by one of our graduates from a few years back to review a cover letter for a position that they were applying for, and the cover letter was 2 pages. And I just wrote back and said, okay, I'm going to start it for you. I'm going to show you how I think it should go, but it can't go over a page because I know the position you're applying for, and they won't read over a page. The recommended ways, usually it's electronic now. Everything's so electronic in our office, and there's usually, you can mail it. You can send it to the hiring manager, like the position I just told you that we have open. A lot of people sent me. It's not hard to find out who I am. So in this job and career services, I get, and I applaud it, by the way, I get lots of emails with it. I just wanted you to know I sent my resume and cover letter in, and I'm sending you a copy of it. And the first thing I do is I forward it to HR, and I say, can you respond to this? Because I'm not allowed to. So just wanted you to know that in terms of the cover letter. But these are some of the ways that you might look at doing it. I think the worst thing you can do is fax a cover letter. And most people don't have faxes anymore, but fax is really distorted. Yeah.
As far as format, would you recommend that we attach it to PDF or a Word doc?
I think that's a really good question. I think PDF is much easier. Yeah. It's much more universal. Word, especially where I was just mentioning to Haley that we converted to 2010, Office 2010 this summer, which was like a culture shock for my staff, but it does interesting things to documents. So I would just say if you could make it as easy as possible for people to receive. Yeah.
The only reason why I was asking that is because when I used to work for the city of Escondido, they don't have like Adobe. randomly on their computer. We had like 1997 Word, and so like when we were hiring in our department, they're like, "Well, I can't see this attachment," and so I was just like, "Oh."
Well, just so you know, most of the systems, and this happens at our university, get converted anyway. And when I get them, they're all as a PDF. I can't see. I remember, and this is dating me, but I remember when we used to do job searches, we'd look at their Word docs to see how they formatted it, to see if they actually knew Word. You know, were you spacing with a space bar? Were you tabbing? Or how are you setting it up?
Wow.
That's dating it, I know. And I did provide, oh wait, I didn't provide a cover letter. Yeah.
To talk about the dates on your resume, let's say you've done something for like 8 months. How do you reflect that on? Is it just the year? Is it the
You could do
exact
like
months?
JAN, like January, JAN. I was just having this discussion with a student yesterday. JAN to AUG 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. And what I try to do is, I try to make the resume, you know, this is from an NT's perspective, as clean as possible, because even in our system, when you apply for a job with our office, you have to re-enter that information again, and they want month and date and all that. So on your resume, I would say, try to keep it as clean as you can. Any other question? The cover letter guide, by the way, is, I didn't include it with this, but it's on our website, and you also can pick up copies in our office. Yeah.
I have another question in regards to the cover letter. When it's almost like a page and it goes over a little bit, is it okay to adjust the margins?
That's what I would do.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the resume as well, right?
Yeah, the problem with the resume, sometimes people stretch them out a lot. I think the margins go down to like an eighth of an inch. And it might not print out, so just be careful. And for older people like me, when I'm reading and I have to put my glasses on, it's a real bummer. 8-point font, I'm like, oh, come on.
What's the smallest font that you would recommend?
I'm glad you're asking about font. I would use Arial font, and I would really avoid Times New Roman. You'll notice that mine's not in Times New Roman. I was talking to Mary Shojar, the director of the Workability. She and I are co-administrators for Workability 4 on campus. And Times New Roman is one of the hardest fonts for disabled people. The programs that have to convert that can convert Arial much better. But I would say for Arial, I would only go down to a 10-point font.
What about other fonts, like Georgia?
I can't remember. We had a discussion about it. I like Arial so much because it's so clean. But she was mentioning, is it Helvetica? Her top two were, she said Arial and the other one. And I said, so you're not a fan of Helvetica?
Similar to Arial.
There's a lot of that are similar now to Arial that are very, very easy to read.
Georgia's very close to Times New Roman.
I like Calibri.
I like Century personally.
It's probably one of what fonts that have serifs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you're probably
Georgia
okay
has
as long as Times New Roman, serifs instead of
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
2 lines being a T. It's got a little line underneath.
Right, and all those, yeah.
Yeah.
And it looks like it could have been done with a typewriter.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
So-
I'm always concerned about that piece in terms of how it's going to be translated, as it were. I want you to say a couple words about interviews, and I realize I'm going over time, so I'm going to really keep this brief. This is just going to continue a theme that's been my entire presentation, be relevant to the position of the organization, be concrete. I would say, a lot of people forget to bring a leather portfolio with a notepad and have notes to yourself. So if you can't remember your 5 strengths, write them down, and then you can keep mentioning them. And sometimes we get nervous and we can't take notes during the interview. Don't worry about it. You don't have to. You can just open it and you'll have your notes to yourself about what you wanted to cover. I would say, in terms of answering the question, avoid, being boring. Usually, for me, boring is when it goes on a long time, or it's all me, and it's nothing about the other person. Confusing. If you have to explain a process, always break it down into steps. And because people, one of the things that we ask for our career counselors is, tell us about the process you would use in career counseling. So I want to know what are 3 steps that you use when you get into a room with a person to try and do an intake interview. Leaving the listener uninformed and then rambling aimlessly. So you know, this is pretty easy to go through. I would say research the position, division, and organization. I had a position open for a career counselor, and you know what the deciding factor was for the committee? The first question, one of the first questions they asked was, what can you tell us about our center from our website? And one of the people said, I haven't gone to your website. Yeah, they were all like, and I just said, when they gave me the recommendation, I said, I agree. I don't want, careers are so online that I don't want somebody in my center who didn't take the time to look at who we are, because we invest a lot in that. So the position, the division, the organization. You're more than welcome to contact the hiring manager. In this case, it's me. And please know that if they're silent like I am, it's just because legally we're required to be that way. But I do like it. I had somebody the other day who called me and left me a voicemail, sent me an email, and I forwarded it on to HR and I just said, could you answer this? But what I thought to myself was, good for you, you know? Now, if they keep calling me after the person sends in the email from HR, then I'm going to be a little bit worried. But I do think it's a good idea to research it, to let them know. You know, student affairs is not always the home of career services. We're often in academic affairs. I would want you to know when you come in for an interview where I report up to or where we report up to, because it really influences who we are. Well, these are some of the, have you all heard about the STAR method? STAR method is used in behavior-based interviews, and we have this on our handout, so if you're too tired to copy this, don't worry about it. A lot of interviewers want this, and they keep on asking questions if you don't answer in this format. So the STAR method is situation, task, action, results. So they're going to say, tell me about a time when, and what they're expecting you to say is, well, you know, I had this difficult client, and they kept, you know, challenging me, and what I did was I slowed down a little bit. I went back to my basics in terms of what I know about career counseling, and the result was, you know, this or that or the other. By the way, you don't have to have a happy ending, but this is for looking at the STAR method in terms of when interviewers are trained, a lot of them are trained to look for these items and to report out on them. It's funny, was it Chevron on campus last year, and they left their interview guide behind, and I was cleaning up the interview rooms, and it was STAR. They had the STAR thing that they were using for our students, and I thought, well, good. I'm glad they're doing that. So this one's pretty easy. Again, situation, task, action, and result. Context, what you did, what came out of it. Yeah?
What do you think about having like a 30-second commercial? That's like a phrase that's thrown around. It's to describe, you know, like a little half a minute to a minute, so that you can answer the question, tell me about yourself.
Yes, I think it's a good idea. I'd rather actually because we do have a whole handout on how to create those, the elevator pitch, and they have their place. I think when you're at the beginning of an interview, and I like opening an interview with tell me about yourself.
Right.
I would say, think about these 5 strengths,
Right.
and I'd love it if you built an answer around that.
Right.
You know, just say,
Absolutely.
I could tell you a lot about myself. You know, you can answer with a question. What would you like to know? Would you like to know about my academic history?
Oh,
Right.
interesting.
Some people tell me their entire life story, and I don't want that.
Yeah, it's a broad question. Tell
It
me
is a
about yourself.
broad question.
So there's a lot of room for interpretation.
Well, since I'm applying for a career counseling position, let me tell you about the strengths that I have as a career
Right.
counselor on
Bring
this,
it
on
up.
this, and on this. Yeah. Again, I'm answering from my preference in terms of I'm going to go back to type. Now, you might get other advice, but that's the way I would approach that one.
Well,
Okay.
makes sense.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
Okay, good. You know, this one is really important. Position requires, read the position description many, 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 many times. And then what motivates you to apply? I always ask that of people. When I'm in an interview, I'll always ask, you know, what motivates you? What are your greatest motivators? And almost without fail, career counselors say, I want to make a difference in other people's life, or I want to help people. And I listen for that, because if they don't tell me that, I'm thinking, well, I don't want you in our center, you know, 8 hours a day if you don't want to change or help people.